Today we're going to use cabbage in a meal. Now many of us are familiar with cabbage. A lot of us think of it as old people food or peasant food, and we don't like it real well with the exception of maybe in coleslaw. So we're going to try something different. We're going to do an egg roll bowl meal using shredded cabbage as part of that because that's an often used ingredient in an egg roll. The difference is we're not going to put it in a roll and wrap it up. We're going to serve it in a bowl. So I'm going to start with 2 teaspoons of canola oil. You could use regular vegetable oil as well. When that gets just a little bit hot, I'm going to add about 3/4 of a pound of ground pork. Now you could use other kinds of meat as well, other ground meats. You could use chicken. I've tried it with beef. It tastes good. It just doesn't taste like an egg roll. Beef doesn't take me to that part of the world. Pork is a really commonly used type of meat for that though. There are different types available in the market. This one is a 93% lean, so I shouldn't have to drain it later. If you use one that's got a higher fat content, I noticed in some stores the fat content was up to 20%, so as opposed to 7. So if you get one with a higher fat content, go ahead and use it, not a problem. Just make sure that you drain the fat off as it goes. You want to break this up while it cooks, and you want to cook it until it is thoroughly cooked, which if we could use a thermometer on ground meat, which would mean we could cook it to 160 degrees. Thermometers don't work well with ground meat not formed into patties, and so we're going to have to use color, which is not a good way to determine doneness. But we're going to cook it until it's no longer pink, and it's going to continue to cook a little bit longer after that. So I'm not worried that we're going to end up with pork that's a little bit underdone. People often tend to cook pork much more than it needs to these days, but once it's been ground and microbes can have the opportunity to be combined in with it, no matter what kind of ground meat you're working with, it needs to come up to 160 degrees. So keep breaking that up as it goes, and when it gets to its end point, we'll come back and take the next step. All right, to this I'm going to add around a teaspoon of garlic, 1 clove. That is always going to vary depending on the size of the clove that you happen to be working with. Also, I've got a teaspoon of minced ginger. Now you could go ahead and grate the ginger as well. Use fresh ginger because the dehydrated ginger is really not a substitute. And also 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper is going to go in here. We're just going to cook this really briefly, about 30 seconds, just so those aromatics begin to work. Again, we're going to keep adding more ingredients and building flavors in here. When you buy the ginger, don't buy a lot unless you use a lot of ginger. A little nubbin like this, I only used about 1 inch to do what we're doing here, twice. So a little tiny piece won't cost you very much, should cost you less than 50 cents, and it will prevent you from having to throw it away again later. All right, next ingredients we're going to add to this. Let me get the last of the good flavors off of that spoon. I'm using 4 cups of coleslaw mix. If you want to just go ahead and shred up cabbage, that's perfectly fine. You can do it that way too. And then I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of sliced green onion. Notice these are all the flavors that you're going to get when you go to your favorite Chinese restaurant and get egg rolls. That's one of my favorite things to do on Friday night is Chinese food. So egg rolls are always included. So this is a nice middle of the week way to have some of that kind of experience as well, or if you live too far away from the Chinese restaurant. So this we're going to cook for about 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. Keep your eye on it. You don't want the cabbage to completely wilt, but you do want it to wilt a little bit. You want to keep some of the crunch in there. All right, I've got a tablespoon of a light soy sauce because we're going to add a little bit less sodium to this because we've got a lot of flavors already built up in here. And then a teaspoon of toasted sesame oil. We're going to stir those together. Basically, this is done. We're going to take it off the heat, make sure they get blended together real well so that all the soy sauce isn't in one bite and not in another one. Oh, it smells terrific now. If you can't find toasted sesame oil, you can use regular sesame oil or you can leave it out. It does add a texture and a mouthfeel to it, so I would probably use plain if I couldn't find the other. And then we have brown rice, 1/2 cup of brown rice per person. And we're just going to serve this over the top. And this becomes our egg roll in a bowl. A little bit more green onion over the top of that. And there you go. Chinese dinner when you weren't expecting it. I hope you give this one a try. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.